Good morning, party people. How's it going? Happy Father's Day. Don't forget to call your parents if you're lucky enough to still have them around and tell them good Happy Father's Day. Dang it, see, I've got asthma, and the first time that I talk during the morning, I immediately cough. And I forget that sometimes on some mornings I'll sit and be jamming before you and I get together. I'll sit and be here jamming exactly. So later, panic. Yeah, sometimes you'll be singing along. And this morning I wasn't singing along. I was jamming to Dead Mouse, which was instrumental, of course. And there wasn't a lot of singing in the parts I was in. So unfortunately, no screaming or no talking for me there. D. Sanchez, good morning from Honduras. Good to see you. Good morning, G. Sardine. One of these days you'll have to tell me how to pronounce that from over in the Netherlands. Raphael, good morning. Jean says good morning, Brent, as well. Howdy, folks. So this morning, the thing that I wanted to do was, hey, woo, Adam Saxton. Adam Saxton in the house, ladies and gentlemen. And Scotland, Ireland, all the beautiful parts. Not that the rest of the world isn't beautiful. Like Ecuador, absolutely, or Honduras too as well, absolutely gorgeous. But Scotland and Ireland are still on my bucket list. Like I've been to Wales, I've been to Isle of Man, and absolutely adored both of those. I love the whole green rolling hills. I love the rain and all of that. That's totally gorgeous. And of course the whiskey. There's so much interesting history over there. Good evening from India. Yeah, all over the place in terms of time zones too. And it's funny because I'd hardly ever get an American audiences in here when I'm live streaming with y'all in the normal times that I do it, because it's 5:19 a.m. here in San Diego. So of course that's really friendly to those of you in other time zones. And it's really funny to me that like my core target market, Americans for the most part, are in like SQL Dev, DBA. Ooh, wow, dang! Sitting in your garage installing paint protection film on your Model I. Why, very nice. I like the looks of those. Those look fantastic. And of course, they're obviously the car of the future. I mean, it's just like it's a given that Tesla is going to be where it's at. And I want Elon to succeed. I don't have an electric car. It doesn't really make sense for me personally because the only time that I get in cars is on long road trips. And I love the noise, the engine noise and all that from a classic combustion car. But I know that like electric is the way of the future. And like the instant that Porsche brings out an electric 911, not the Taycan, the four-door. I'm like, I don't want a four-door car. I'm a single guy, so to speak. It's me and my wife, but single's the wrong word. But we don't have kids, and we're never going to have kids, so. SQL Dev DBA says acceleration is brutal. Seriously, like even just the base Model 3s and Ys will outrun my 911 on stoplights to stoplights. And it's so funny that I'll see people in Model 3s every now and then. You know, in a gas car, you pull up next to each other and you rev your engines when you want to race. Like I get motorcycles trying to race me all the time. But you know, the people in Model 3s and Model Ys, we have yet to come up with a hand signal from electric people that says, do you want to race? I haven't quite figured that one out yet. G. Bargsley, good to see you again this morning as well, too. K. McConnich, good evening from Sydney. Yeah, nice. And Burt Crown, too. Welcome to the Live Class Season Pass, too, as well. Good to have you in the club. Jedi Mind Gorilla, you're killing me, Smalls. I have no life, and you give me a reason to participate. Don't leave your tube. Don't change the channel. This just in. You know, I always wonder when people say that they can't retire. You know, I see people say, "Oh, I don't know what I would do if I retired." I'm like, "Are you what?" I could sit on a couch and read Wikipedia for the rest of my life. There is so much interesting stuff on Wikipedia. It is mind-blowing. And really, it's the same thing with technology. Like, I could just retire and just go through and just retire and go through and learn things continuously, and I'd be good. Yeah, Surly Dev, I have the auto mod stuff set on a pretty aggressive. The word aggressive would even be filtered. Jedi Mind Gorilla, I can't retire. I own a boat. That's a good point. Tehaswi Dasha says, are you excited for Formula One 2020? You know what's really funny? I haven't gotten into car racing since the Indy 500. My dad took me to a lot of Indy 500s growing up because my dad worked for Goodyear, so we would get into like pits and we could get around, talk to drivers and stuff like that. So I loved that as a kid growing up. We went to the Indy 500 every year for like, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And then after that, I grew up and I kind of grew out of it, and I haven't gotten that interested in it. One of these days I need to start again, because that is truly a sport. The muscles that those people have to put up with, and the neck muscles and all, just the raw strength that it takes to get through corners. I was lucky enough to do a ride along in an Indy car. They had one of the 2-seat Indy cars. And it's just amazing that they can even think at those speeds, let alone have the physical exertion to get around from one corner to another. Not me, I'm fat. This t-shirt's kind of slimming, which I kind of like. Like, I have live streaming t-shirts that fit a little bit better than regular t-shirts, whereas normally the things that I walk around in kind of look like paper sacks. So, what do I want to do this morning? So this morning, I'm going to go knock out some GitHub issues in the first responder kit. And one of them might be the longest. This one is in 2016. This one I opened myself June 15th, 2016, 4 years ago this week, and no one's ever fixed it. And I say no one's ever fixed it as if I expect the community to magically do my consulting for me. No, through the course of those years, I had employees, and I couldn't bring them to do that work because it's a terrible job. It just wouldn't be this interesting of a job for employees who weren't that interested in Tony Stark. There are edges of my life that are Tony Stark-ish, but so this enhancement that I'm going to work on at first, 4 years ago sucked. It would have been a really terrible thing, and this year it's much more interesting. So what is it? Let me show it to you over in GitHub. So the GitHub enhancement that I'm going to work on here is this SpBlitz Index documents support of XML, column store, spatial, hekaton indexes, and temporal tables. So we have this stored procedure, SpBlitz Index, that tells you things about your index designs. It's kind of like a design check tool. It's not as much about right now performance. It's much more about architectural advice. Do you have too many indexes? Do you not have enough indexes? Do you have indexes that are just being written to, which means they're only slowing you down instead of speeding you up? Well, SQL Server over the years has added a lot of other kinds of indexes. They've added all these other kinds of indexes, and frankly, I don't really know if SpBlitz Index supports them. I'm not trying to add support, I'm just trying to figure out what we do support well. Because sometimes Microsoft will expose information about, like reads and writes, whether an index is getting read or written to. Sometimes they expose that in the same DMVs that regular indexes are involved with, and sometimes they don't. So I need to kind of make a grid of, are they going to show up? Are the results accurate? And what changes do I need to make to SpBlitz Index to really fully support them long term? Well, I also don't know a whole lot about these kinds of indexes. I don't use XML. I don't use column store, although I've been getting much more into it lately. I don't use spatial, I don't use hekaton, and I'm very interested in temporal tables. They don't seem to have gotten any improvements here, but that's a feature that I find really intriguing. So this also means that I'm going to have to learn about these as I go. I'm going to have to create indexes for each of these types. I'm going to use the Stack Overflow database. So I'm going to be reading the documentation, copying syntax out of books online, and scripting things out, and then seeing how SpBlitz Index responds. So let's make a little list here of the stuff that we're going to do. So I'm going to copy out this stuff, and then I'm with Jedi Mind Gorilla. Oh, that's pretty good. I see what you did there. Yeah, I just can't make space in my brain to start to make enough room to learn about spatial indexes. Oh, good. So this is also why I like streaming, because y'all bring smiles to my life. If it was just me, I would be sitting in here swearing probably about some of these kinds of indexes. So what do I need to do? So I am going to start by making a comment here with kind of what our overall game plan is going to be for inside here. So if you don't look for it, you want. I think he means if you don't look for like the space. Yeah, we're making terrible English jokes, really bad English jokes. So we're going to, for each of these index types, we're gonna create an index. See what SpBlitz Index mode 2 gets right and wrong. Now I also need to use the index, so create a, that's true, Adam, you have a point there. This should be like the dad jokes edition of the podcast or the stream. Create a query that will use the index. Both of those are going to be kind of hairy already just to get started with. So let's start with, let's not start with XML because I don't, like if I'm going to pick the order in which I'm going to do these, let's go from kind of easy to hard. For these index types, I actually like Temporal. So let's start with Temporal because it looks really interesting. Temporal, we'll go with column store, then we'll go with hackathon, and then we'll do XML, and finally we'll do spatial. Because I don't think I have any good data for spatial. I may have to play around with that. So let's switch over into the Stack Overflow database. I am going to be using the users table of Stack Overflow. So I'm going to put the structure of that over on the screen just for those of y'all who haven't seen it before. The users table at Stack Overflow holds exactly what you think it holds, a list of everyone who's ever logged into the Stack Overflow database, posted a question, posted an answer, a comment. So it's got 9 million rows in it. If I go say select top 100 star from DBO users, it's got like 9 million rows inside of it that have a good representation of the kind of data that people usually have in their databases. It has date skew, it has numbers, it has free text columns where people can type in whatever they want. So some of these, for example, lend themselves very well to column store. Now, spatial, that's going to be a little bit tricky. So the first index type that I want to go and create is temporal. Now for those of you who haven't seen temporal before, what temporal indexes basically are they're the ability to go back in time and see what a table looked like at different times. For that to be useful, the data needs to be changing. So I'm going to write once we create the temporal index, I'm going to go write a query that will just go through and update people's reputation, for example, and their last access date, so that we'll be able to go back through time and see what their reputation and last access dates look like over time. So how do we create a temporal index? So let's start by going SQL Server temporal table. If I was going to go learn about temporal tables, the person to learn them from, Vicky Harp. So Vicky Harp now works for Microsoft. She used to work at Idera as like an evangelist, or not evangelist, that's the wrong term. Vicky was a product manager over at Idera. And Idera was there. She was interested in working with them at Idera for storing data over time about people's SQL servers. So she did a really good set of temporal table presentations over time. Hey, Renegade! Part of me still wants to call you Renee, but good to see you again. She's good people. She's also phenomenal to follow on Twitter. If you're into Twitter, Vicky is utterly brilliant and very interesting about inclusivity, accessibility, Twitter, SQL Server. She runs, or I don't know that it's correct that she runs. Oh, okay, yeah, it says PM for SQL Server tools at Microsoft. So she has a really good set of presentations on temporal tables. So if you want to go learn more about those, go watch that. I am just going to go back over and hit temporal table so that I can get access from or get stuff from books online. And then let's go through and just say, here we go. Create with system versioning on, and then history table equals employee history. I don't know if I have to go create that table first. So this is the new part of what temporal tables are. I don't know if I have to go create that history table first. Let's go see. So it says simple example. Let's go down a little further and getting started with. and then create table for, hi Santi, good morning. You don't, I will SC says you don't. Okay, perfect. I wish I could. I would love to add it in for an existing table, but just to keep it really simple, I'm not going to bother. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go create an example of the existing users table. I'm going to copy this out. So let's copy this and then come over here. So this is the piece that I'm going to have to use when I go create a table. Let's go script out the contents, create the users table over here, and then I'm going to take that, and then good morning, DB Augie. I'm going to take that and then paste that over here. So now I have my create table statement, except I'm going to call this users TT because temporal table, but also because I really like the Isle of Man. So it says, Matthias says not, it's valid, it's the okay, all right. So let's say, so here I need to say, I'm going to lose all this pad index and stats. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm not keeping any of that stuff. So then let's say this, cut, paste. So we will now just say you, and this, let's see here, with system versioning on. Now it's funny that it's given me the fuzzy underline on with system versioning. Did I mess up the, oh, I probably did. There's probably an extra parentheses. Yep, beautiful. Now this will be users TT history. There we go, that's beautiful. Okay, so now, let's see if that actually works. So let's go minimize this, and then let's see, big money, no whammies. That's okay, that's okay. So it said you can't create due to the existing PK. That's fine. I just need to change the name of my PK, TT, and then let's try it again. Execute, and what? Cannot set system versioning to on when system time period is not defined. Okay, so let's see here. System time. It would be really cool. Dejan Mar says good morning. Good morning. So system version partitioning with. So it doesn't say. Oh, what? No. For system to what? So sys start time. What? What? Sys start time. So Cranky Old has some stuff inside there. Holy moly, what the hell? Oh my goodness, Cranky Old Bastard, do I have to do all of that? Oh my gosh, I'm going to copy paste that out of Cranky Old Bastard's string here and just paste this in just so that y'all can see it on screen. Holy moly, this is a pain in the rear. With system version. Oh, because we have to add a column. What? Oh my God, so we have to add these as additional columns. Okay, Surly does, exactly, Surly does, good point, yes. And I won't be including this out to the public too, so like I'm not going to redistribute this, but that you're so smart, I like how you pay attention, very cool. So Ill Will says, go check the last things from the examples. Okay, so here's what the examples had in here. Valid from, valid to. Why on earth would you? So you have to change the structure of an existing table to do this? This is starting to suck more and more. Now, look, I'm not here to pass judgment on a feature. You know, this is just you're hearing me speak as I read and learn these things. This is why I don't teach about those features, because I don't know anything about how to use them. I'm always very clear on I don't want to be the presenter who just stands up and lectures about something that he read once on books online. It's also why you won't see me using these in my training classes either. So we've got, so I'm going to take Cranky's version up here. Cranky says it needs to know the period of time the row was live. How would you mark it as defunct? That seems really odd to me. So we've got those two. There's our table structure. Now I still need the constraint, so I'm going to cut and paste that, move up here. So I thought it would just automatically, every time there's an update, it would keep like a slowly changing dimension table from a data warehouse. Emmanuel says, good to see we're messing with temporal tables. Used them a lot this week. Oh, very cool. Yeah, Oizoken, I'm totally down with slowly changing dimensions. I'm used to that, but no, it seems odd that you would have to tell the database, hey, this row is no longer valid. Like with slowly changing dimensions, every time there's an update, the history just automatically goes to the temporal tables. So I'm like, why would I need to change it? Tell it what the valid time was. So let's see. I think that gives me these period for. Let's go back and look at the example because it's still blowing chunks about the valid time, valid to. Okay, looks like I need to get that. And then, will that do it? Nope, that still doesn't do it. I don't need that. At this point, I'm just like blindly clicking around. Oh, I see, ill will. I like triggers. I like triggers for this exact purpose. Just go copy the thing in. Why am I now going to have to deal with this crap as additional columns inside my schema? This totally blows. So I've got the sysdate stuff. Let's go back over to the examples. Their example didn't have a clustered index on it. Why the hell would you do that? So now, let me go back to the original. How do they now? Oh, I have so many questions. Script table as create to new window. And then, okay, so it should be a column before a comma before the primary key or the constraint. Okay, so that works. What the hell? Table level constraint does not specify the column list. Oh, did I somehow delete that? Well, hell, I don't need that anyway. I'm just going to go cut that up and I'll put it up next to the column more that I care about. Primary key clustered. Okay, there you go. I don't need to name the constraint. There you go. All right. Now, history table, we'll call this users TT history. And then DBO. And then move you around here and get rid of you. Oh, that's why, because I had the ID down below it. All right, beautiful. Now, let's see. Yes, yes. I don't want to do that too often. Okay, so we got that done. Now we have the table in. Now I want to insert data into it. So I'm going to set identity. You know, it isn't terrible. It isn't that bad. So now let's set identity insert on. I can never remember if it's DBO users TT on. I believe it's that. Perfect. Okay. Insert into DBO users TT. And now I'm going to need to get the list of columns. So let's go get a script table as insert to new window. So here we'll grab all of that, copy, paste that in over here, close you. Matthias says do a select top 10 star from the table. What? Why are y'all saying stop? What's going on there? So weird. Drag the table name to the window. It inserts the column names. So that's true for y'all who don't use Macs, but where it's kind of painful on the Mac is that dragging the stuff around can be real sketchy when the thing moves, and it's not that. It's this columns list, if I remember right. Yeah, so that's cool. It's really sketchy for me when the thing moves, but I do like that you showed that, though. That's kind of nice. Yeah, exactly right. So let's hit enter on these a few times. So I got all of those. Now I can pull you up here and then insert, now select from DBO users. And then we'll copy all of that. Copy, paste. And let's see if that works. All right, cool. So there that goes. Now, when that finishes, which will take a minute because it's like a gig in size. When that finishes, now we're going to have, so if I refresh, now we have two new tables. We got our users TT and users TT history. I think that is the first time that I was looking exactly. I think that is the first time that I've ever expanded the Object Explorer and seen this feature. I've seen presenters do it. I've just never done it myself. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. So now while it runs, coding train, is that like Soul Train, but with a lot less soul and a lot more code? So we have the history table and then the regular table. Okay, as this is working, let's go ahead and run SpBlitz Index. Table name equals users TT. So the first thing that I'm looking for here when I'm looking at SpBlitz Index's support, you see over here in the other row, tab, 9 million rows is affected. So let's save our work here, and then let's switch back over and look at SpBlitz Index. Now, when I call SpBlitz Index with a table name, what it does is it doesn't give you any advice. The first result set tells you about the indexes that already exist on the table. The second result set is Clippy's recommendations. If Clippy found missing index recommendations, he'll put it in there. So the first thing that I'm really looking for is the first result set correct? Does it have the right number of rows? And then if I query that table, do the usage metrics reflect correctly? My guess with a temporal table is that I don't have any work to do to make this work, because these should really just be normal indexes. It's the SQL Server is managing the moves from one place to another. So I'm going to have to run it on users TT and also on TT history, just separately and independently. So the first thing that it looks at, it says we've got 9 million rows in here. Woohoo! That's fantastic. The size is correct. That's a 1.2 gigs ballpark for the users table. That's fine. Neil can't know it disappears like the sands of times. No, it'll totally be available on YouTube. That's the way that YouTube works. It saves recordings. It's kind of cool. You're always open. You're from Antwerp. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, Antwerp, I think, is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. When Americans think of Europe, what they think of is what Antwerp is. You know, we often go to Europe and we see other cities and we're like, oh, that's not really different from the United States. But Antwerp is what we think of as Europe. It's just gorgeous, amazing. Not enough people know about it. It's a beautiful place. So at first, it looks like this is correct. Let's go do a couple of reads out of here just to see. We'll go select star from DBO users TT where display name equals Brent Ozar. We'll go run that and we'll go get the actual execution plan just to see if Clippy recommends anything. He does. So let's go run that like 10 times just so that Clippy builds in a little missing index request there. And then let's go look over at SpBlitz Index again. Tristan, I'll talk about Clippy in a while at some other time. Durban, South Africa, very cool. Cocktails at 9 serves awesome cocktails just next to the cathedral. I wonder, it's got to be really hard to survive. Well, that's a whole other topic. All right, so these numbers appear right. We're looking good here so far. I'm very happy with that. The sizes look correct. That's all fine. Got a missing index recommendation there. That's working beautifully. So I'm happy so far with temporal tables. Now, let's try the history. So let's try the same exact thing with history. Now, I don't know that there's going to be anything in there, and that's okay. Let's go look and see how the execution plan looks. Beautiful. There's no rows in history yet. So now I don't know this. Well, here first we'll run SpBlitz Index on the history table. What I don't know is that if there's anything that I need to do when I do updates to move things along to the history table. Beautiful. That works correctly. There are no rows in the history table right now, and it looks like I didn't stop to think about this. So the clustered index on the history table is set on end date and start time. I'm going to guess that that has to do with the copy paste from or the copy paste of code that I got from. It wasn't Surly Dev. Who pasted in? Cranky. Yeah, Cranky gave me the code for this. Andy Bear. Sure. Look at Brento or Boo. Basic SQL techniques. Learn to query Stack Overflow, Brent Ozar. I have a blog post. If you search for learn to query SQL Server with the Stack Overflow database, I've got like a 10-part series that teaches you how to query T-SQL with the Stack Overflow database. For the rest of you who are watching, you've probably never seen this before because this was an experiment that I did. I had a company say, hey, look, we want to train you to teach our data analysts how to write T-SQL. And I said, well, okay, I'll do it, but you have to pay me to write the course because there are a lot of really good courses out there already on how to query. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it with the Stack Overflow database, the one that I know and love. So it was really funny. They paid me to write the whole training, and then the company ended up shifting gears, and they didn't want to train their data analysts anymore. So I had all the code already written, so I just put it on the website, and I was like, here you go, folks. Off you go to the races. If you ever, and I sent it to their analysts, too, who are signed up for the training course. I'm like, here you go. Your company decided not to bring me in for the training course, but they already paid me to build it for you. So here you go. You can go run it that way. All totally free. So there you go, Andy Bear TV. So in here now, do I need to do anything fancy in order to move versions into the history table? Matthias says, query the TT table with star and the end call, start call, end call. The tables reside in the column itself. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and Emmanuel, I think you're right, and I think Vicky talks about that in her. Thanks, Early Dev, for putting that in there. I think Vicky talks about that in her session. That if you want to change the indexes on it, you can. I want to say she said you could disable the temporal relationship, make the changes you want to the history table, and then re-enable it again. So let's see if I update some rows. Let's say update DBO user set reputation equals reputation. I always do that. Plus 1,000, where display name equals Brent Ozar. Let's go give myself some reputation points, and I'm going to just do that a few times. And then let's go see what's inside the temporal table. Nothing. Oh, I made a mistake. Who knows what my mistake was? In this statement, what's the mistake I just made? I caught it, but let's see if y'all did.
10, 9, 8.
Yes. That is correct. Nicely done. Very good, Ill Will. And same thing with Vimal. You got it too as well. Bert Crown got it as well. Bert, see, it's sobering now, Bert. You're paying me for training, and now you're realizing, oh my God, this guy can't even pick the right table to go update. So now let's go select star from the yes. That's much better. I didn't need to select it 10 times. Okay, good. So now we see Brent's reputation over time, the beauty of Matthias. I will not answer it. That's good. I respect that, Matthias. That's good. So in here, I have the history of Brent and his reputation over time. That's kind of awesome. There's no recommended missing index. I'm kind of surprised by that, although not a whole lot of, Andreas, welcome to the club. Thank you. I appreciate it. DB Augie says, apparently no need to issue a commit. Yeah, because I didn't start a transaction. I didn't do a begin trans. So there are some, like Oracle, I want to say, uses implicit, or you can opt into implicit transactions. Oh, yes, absolutely. MongoDB boys are allowed here. So Dat boy, just so that you don't freak out, from time to time I may make jokes about MongoDB. but I make way more jokes about SQL Server. You know, I know that if you're into MongoDB, you probably catch flack from time to time. People are like, don't use MongoDB, it sucks. In here, if you want a comedy laugh, watch for how many times that I make fun of bugs in SQL Server, and you won't feel so bad. Now, I still think that MongoDB sucks worse. But as a tool, like all the databases out there are just a carpenter's toolkit set of stuff. They're different tools for different uses, so I'm totally okay with it. So you're absolutely welcome here. It's great, and you should not be ashamed of yourself. That's cool. And said my girl thought MongoDB was a gang. For those of you who don't know what MongoDB is, there are all kinds of NoSQL databases out there because developers got sick and tired. I bet a lot of you in here are DBAs. A lot of you are DBAs, and you have a reputation that DBA stands for don't bother asking, because the DBAs always say no. Thank you, William. Thank you. I appreciate it. So we have a reputation of don't bother asking because the DBAs always say no, and our stuff's really expensive and it doesn't perform worth a damn. And then so all of a sudden developers start going, wait a minute, this database sucks. I could do better myself. And then that's how you get things like MongoDB that are extremely specialized for certain use cases. So just be welcoming to people on other platforms too, because or else they're going to write open source ones and it'll replace you, like Postgres, which that's another story. So again, William, welcome to the club. Thanks, I appreciate that. So now we've done the select. Now Matthias says select star from users for TT where display name as of this and as of 20, we'll say 2020 06 21 05 40 a.m. So now we should be able to see, right? Oh, no. That's okay. I put it in the wrong place. Cut and put it up here. Because you could see contents of different tables. Damn it. Okay. Is it, all right, let's go back to the books online. So let's see. Between, for system time between, does this ridiculous comical. For system time between, let's copy this, and this. Who, right? This is not the history table. Oh, Matthias. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, okay. Let's see how that goes. For system time as who would write this? That's miserable. Okay, so maybe there wasn't a row in there as of 540. How about 545? Execute. How about as of 555? Execute. Who does this stuff? Select star from DBO users TT history. Let's go see what the times in there are. Oh, the server's in UTC. So let's say copy this, paste, and try that. I'll take it. Now that's really hilarious to me. Okay, that's fine. I mean, at least it worked. At least it worked, whatever. So I guess the temporal tables don't build supporting indexes with the other columns that are needed. So like you've got display name, then system start time, then system end time. If we had an index on any of these columns, we'd probably be better off than we were. So that's okay. At least we've got it. I'm going to go run go 10 times there on that just to get it. You know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to update everybody's reputation. Update DBO users, set reputation equals reputation plus 1. I'm just going to update everybody's reputation plus 1 point. Shoot! You almost did it again. TT. So let's update everybody's reputation by 1 point, just to throw a lot of stuff into the temporal table. Thank you, Bert. Yep, that skill will come in handy during the live classes. I hardly ever make mistakes like that. And Matthias, yeah, I saw when we created, they weren't even hidden. They were up there on the reel when we had to go and create it. They were that, right? So it just basically looks like I would have to include that in every index that I have for my indexing strategy, which is fine. I'm totally worth the penalty of that. That, to me, for temporal tables, that part is worth the penalty. The part that's probably a pain in the rear is that I would have to do this for every single table in the joins. That sucks. I can see why this would be really cool with generated T-SQL. So let's go back over here now. James, thank you. Welcome to the club. I appreciate it. Cheers. Cheers. So now let's see how SpBlitz Index looks. So I'll go back and look at SpBlitz Index. And this is good because I kind of expect if the as of queries just automatically now want 2 more columns, I kind of expect to see those as either includes or secondary keys in every index. But the good news is they appear beautifully right in here. There's no changes for SpBlitz Index. Everything appears like it works perfectly. Then let's look at the history table and see what's going on over there. Now you'll notice that it doesn't show all the rows that are in there yet. I've updated Brent's stuff a lot, but over on the other tab, oh, now that it's finished, the work in progress query finished over here. So now let's go back and go check the history table again, see what its new size looks like. There we go. Oizoken, we're only finishing up with Temp2. Exactly. See, this is why the employees that I had never wanted to actually do this GitHub issue. This is the easiest one, and they're only getting... Although I would say Column Store is really easy, but I expect to find bugs in SpBlitz Index there, because I've known about some gotchas around index sizes. So this looks beautiful as well. This correctly shows the table size as well. I do find it kind of amusing that with temporal tables, it's copying the whole row. It's not copying the parts that changed. So if you had like a Stack Overflow type environment where people are constantly changing their last access date and reputation, this feature would suck because the table would balloon in size basically every day. It would double, quadruple, quintuple, and so forth because we're constantly they are constantly updating reputation, last access date, stuff like that, view count. So the table size would be bananas. It is, let's do one other thing. I want to go grab, I will now want to run my select star looking for Branozar because I expect that the execution plan, the execution plan starts to suck a whole lot more now because now we're not only scanning the entire users table, we're also scanning the entire history table looking for Brent. And let's see if there's a missing index recommendation from Clippy on the history table. Now, as a quick reminder, when you're looking at execution plans, Clippy only shows the first index. He doesn't show all of them. This execution plan may have multiple missing indexes hidden inside of here. You just only literally see the first one. So the first one up there says it would make the query 38% faster. Let's look inside the XML and see where the rest are. Right click and show me the execution plan. And look at that. Clippy shows the first missing index recommendation, but there's an even bigger one here on the temporal table, and Clippy doesn't even show you that. So just as a side note, whenever you see missing indexes, you want to be careful just to understand that you're only seeing the first one, not all of them. So I'm going to go run that 10 times just to have it build up a missing index recommendation on the temporal table. And then we're going to switch over and look at SpBlitz Index, check the index usage on the history table, because I expect Clippy to populate something in the second result set, and he does. Beautiful. So sizes work, usage works, missing index work, requests work, all of that stuff. So in terms of temporal tables, I'm going to say that SpBlitz Index has full support. Now, to answer a couple of questions that people came up with in the last couple of minutes. So Matthias says, on a serious note, temporal is really useful when you actually need every state of a row. I agree. I can see how it's really like an easy, slowly changing dimension. Building slowly changing dimensions sucks in terms of an ETL process. So that I totally get as cool. Now, it's not as good as slowly changing dimensions because you're not able to reload history at certain points in time. It's always as of the history it's always as of the date of the system, not the date of the original data. I get it. That's okay. Separate issue. Andrea says, is the first one, when you talk about missing indexes, is the first one always the most critical? Nope, it's just literally the first one. So in the example that you saw, the first one was 38%, the second one was 61%. The second one was more critical. Andy from Lithuania says, hey, if this is the right place for the question, could you recommend online courses for Postgres? I actually haven't taken any Postgres classes. There was a friend of mine who used to do one, and I bought his video, so I still had that one, but I haven't taken one. So maybe someone else in the crowd can recommend one. I would recommend one in a heartbeat if I had one. But no, that's not true. There is one. Oh, there's a really good one, and I can't believe I almost let that slip. Curious Moon Postgres. This right here. Oh. Andy, thanks. Glad you like it. So those of you who are interested in Postgres, can't recommend this enough. This is really cool. I will copy paste that out. So you are using NASA's data in order to explore data, using NASA's data to learn Postgres. Just brilliant idea. If you watch the trailer, super high production value. I was just totally impressed. I haven't taken the course yet, but I've just heard nothing but amazing things about it. So. Jedi My Gorilla says, sorry if this is a dumb question. Believe me, all yours are way better than most. How would this be different than change data capture? For me, change data capture is about giving you tools that you would go and use to go build your own ETL process. Like it'll flag the stuff that changes, and then you would use an ETL program to nibble off the stuff from CDC and then go put it in a history table of your own design. So it's there are other gotchas with CDC, and I can never remember the differences between CDC and change tracking because I don't implement them that often. But like one of them only stores the most recent change. One of them will let you pick and choose which columns I think will let you audit on, whereas temporal tables, you don't get a choice. You get every change. Night Farian, thank you. I appreciate it. Very cool. Welcome to the club. All right, so wow. So I am happy here with temporal tables. So I'm going to write up a little documentation here and say, hey, look here, we got temporal tables. Next up, we'll look at the next type we're going to go hit. Let's go see what our next one's going to be. I want to say I picked column store is the next one. Yeah. So the next one that we'll do is column store indexes. So before what were y'all saying about me being really good at production values? And then immediately I go and do something like that. So what I was going to say was I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, I will do the column store indexes. So 5 minutes bio break. We'll do the column store indexes. I will see y'all back in here in 5 minutes.
Fatality.
Okay, let's see here. So Oizokin says switching to Twitch, it seems to be a bit more real time. Yeah, it's like 11 seconds behind ballpark. It depends on, like, it seems like Twitch does really well. YouTube's a little worse. Facebook and Mixer are like the slowest out of them, I think. But Twitch is pretty doggone close. Let's see here. We had a few questions over the break. Oh, Jedi Mind Gorilla says I have to go. Wife calling me down for breakfast. Okay, cool. Dreaded Buzzkill, how much longer is he on for? My coffee shop downstairs opens at 8. I say my, but it's just the one that I go to. So the coffee shop downstairs opens at 8, so you'll have me for about another 2 hours. Let's see here. What else? There was another one. Joking about the commercial. Tristan says resource recommendation for an intro to relational database stuff. Oh, thanks. Welcome to the club, Valeriano. Very cool. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Renegade says, would the update and delete trigger work better than the temporal tables if you don't want the overhead? Yes, because what's nice about the trigger approach is that you can pick and choose which columns you want to update on. So like if I'm Stack Overflow and I'm tracking changes to the users table, I don't want a trigger based on last access date. And I probably wouldn't want to trigger off of reputation either. But I might want to trigger on changes to their name, URL, or about me. Those might be, and so a trigger would make that way easier. Plus you could choose how you want to structure the history table differently too. The Bert says, wouldn't this be better than coding to populate an audit table for all changes? I'm thinking of an accounting system. Yes, because in an accounting system, you tend to do less updates and deletes. In an accounting system, you land in new transactions once, and then you just kind of leave them in place. The worst case for Temporal would be constantly changing data where only a couple columns out of the entire table were changing, because you have to track by looking at default, you could change this because of course you could go through the history table and prune stuff out if you wanted to, or do triggers on it, whatever you want to do. So let's see here. What else came in during the break? Oh, Andy says, what would you recommend as a beginner front end for SQL? If you're working with Microsoft SQL Server, this is the one that most folks start with, is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. If you work with other databases, you'll want to use whatever platform or whatever front end that they use. Let's see here. As Hutchie says, why do I stream before 6 a.m.? I'm usually open at 2 a.m. I say open. I usually get up around 2 a.m. And then I spend like an hour catching up on email, doing just regular stuff. And then weekend mornings, I use this time to do blogging and like coding work before my wife gets up. My wife's usually up around like 9 a.m. or so. So then once she's up, I'm done doing the work thing for the rest of the day. Weekends, I try not to work except before my wife wakes up. Okay, so in the last hour, we did temporal tables. Now we're going to do column store. One brief word quick before I go into those. SQL Grease is my sponsor this week. SQL Grease is a totally free monitoring solution that you can go install SQL Grease, and it works totally free for 7 days, capturing all kinds of data about your SQL Server. You don't have to put in any kind of repository. They collect the data over in Azure, do all kinds of analytics on it, and send you back recommendations on what you should do with your SQL Server. So totally free to start for 7 days. If you want to upgrade to the permanent one, you can, but the 7-day one is always free. So you can always go re-register again with them periodically whenever you have performance problems that you want to go investigate. Super lightweight, uses extended events. So that's SQLgrease.com is this week's session. Raise that something says 2 a.m. What time do you go to bed? Like 8 p.m.? Yes, exactly. So pretty much exactly when I go to bed. I'm usually in bed at 8, and I'm usually reading for half an hour to 45 minutes just in order to totally disconnect, and then I'm out. Because for me, usually the stuff that I want to do, I get much more productivity in the morning than I do late at night. But of course, everybody's body clock is different on how that works. All right, so let's come back over here. So I've got, let's see here. So that we just did temporal tables. Now I'm going to go do column store. Now column store, I don't have to hit the documentation for. Column store is, I just know pretty well enough that I can start to work in and show that to you. So let's go over and look at a table that makes a lot of sense for column store. The one that I'm going to use is the votes table. So the votes table at Stack Overflow, you can vote up and down questions and answers. You can say like, that's a good question, that's a bad question, that's a good answer, that's a bad answer. The data from the votes table is pretty redundant. If I go in and say select top 100 star from DBO votes, the data in here is extremely similar. If you look at the dates and times on here, it's extremely similar. And this is where column store indexes really excel. They excel when the data is very similar and compresses really well. The column store indexes also work really well when the table's wide. This table isn't actually all that wide, but we're going to go create a column store index with this. To do it, I'm going to copy the column store, or I'm going to copy this table to another table. I'm going to create another version of the votes table now, just so that I can show kind of the before and after. So the storage on this fella, 5 gigs in size. So 5 gigs is a non-trivial number. It's going to take a little bit of time when I go and copy this or make a new compressed index. You know what? I'm not going to bother creating another. Let's do a non-clustered column store index first, and I'll show you that. So to create a non-clustered column store index, I'm going to say create index, and I've been trying to train people since Eric Darling kind of talked me into it to stop doing IX at the beginning. We call these Roman indexes now. There's no reason to put IX in front because if it's an index, it just shows up and is an index on the execution plan. With column store indexes, though, I still do. The way that I do column store indexes is NCCI for non-clustered column store indexes. Babu, I don't know, actually. Usually people don't hook up their SQL servers to the internet. Most people don't, so a web-based management studio doesn't make sense. So create index NCCI, and then I'm going to put in, we'll just call it, normally you name it out with whatever the columns are going to be, but I'm just going to say NCCI all on DBO votes and the columns that are going to be in it. ID, post ID, user ID, bounty amount, vote type ID, creation date, is deleted, is private. So I'm going to start that execution. Now, one of the things that's interesting with column store indexes is that you can pick and choose which columns you want them on. If I was going to put it on every single column, doing a non-clustered column store index makes no sense. Because now at this point, I have the regular row store version of the table, and I have a column store index with exactly the same data. That would be as dumb as one of Clippy's indexes where he says, hey buddy, looks like you're trying to query by all of the columns. You know what you need is you need an index on all of the columns. You just doubled the size of the table. In reality, you would not dude, Santi, good catch, Santi, oh ho ho. Santi, mustard, column store. Santi, you are the smartest person in the room at the moment, or the most awake, one of the two. So let's go and execute that again. So now that I've got the right index type in place. So normally you wouldn't ever want to do exactly what I'm doing here. The only reason that I'm doing this is we're trying to test SpBlitz Index to see how column store indexes show up. That's it. Santi says most awake. Bert says, is this a single index or it's one per column? You can really think of column store indexes as, I must have dipped my finger in the coffee there, or the water there. You can think of column store indexes as an index on every column. And SQL Server will automatically combine the parts of them in order to build together a row. So now when this goes and finishes, because it's also interesting to see how these work, because it's a lot of work, I'm going to do SpBlitz who just to show you another thing while we're working together. So SpBlitz who will show you what queries are running right now, including, so here's my create index, including the live query plan. So I can see what SQL Server is doing So SQL Server has a couple of it looks like a couple of index scans going on inside here. I'm not quite exactly sure what it's doing here. That one's single-threaded, and then this one's multi-threaded. That's kind of bananas, and they're both reading rows. That's kind of tricky. But one of the things that I do like about this is that you can see how much RAM this thing needs. If I scroll across and get to the memory grants. So here, SQL Server wants, I'm going to copy this out just so that I can put commas inside there. SQL Server wants 556 megabytes of RAM in order to perform this operation. Column store indexes can be memory heavy in order to build and can also affect the parallelism of their creation as well. So this thing took about 1:09 in order to go build the index. Now that the index is in place, let's go see how SpBlitz Index sees that table. So let's go look at the votes table and go see. So here we have the clustered index of the table. The regular clustered index of the table is 5.3 gigs. The non-clustered column store index is 1.2 gigs. So that gives you an idea of how good column store is at compression. Just as a side note, a long time ago, like 10 years ago, compressing tables was temporarily trendy. SQL Server introduced this compression option for indexes where you could do row compression or page compression. It's trendy and it never really caught on that much, and I can kind of see why. It had some misses in terms of its implementations. I raised that transition. Thank you. I appreciate that. So it had kind of some misses there, and not a lot of people used it, which I think is kind of a shame because it was kind of a cool feature. These days, when people say, hey, I'm thinking about implementing compression, I'm like, you should go and hit column store indexes, because column store indexes get real compression, like 70–80% isn't unusual. Kooky says, does it matter the order of the columns when I'm doing a column index? Like, do I have A, B, C? Not at all. Makes no difference whatsoever. It does make a difference which ones you pick, because you may not actually want all of them. So now, back to how SpBlitz Index is rendering this, because I have some disappointments here. So in here, it says a column store index with 8 includes. Now, frankly, that's not really true. They're not really included columns. They're really keys. Because if I go in and do a seek, like if I say select count star from DBO votes where user ID equals 26837, that's me. If I go look at the execution plan for that, SQL Server says that it does a column store index scan, but let's dig a little deeper into that. Look to go see the, I'm not going to be able to see it there. Let's see, I didn't put stats IO on, did I? Set statistics IO on. Let's go see if SQL Server actually read the entire thing. Oh, it did. Oh, that's kind of crappy. I thought it would actually skip. I have user ID on there. Segment reads 147, segments. All right, I'm not going to get into that today. Clearly, I don't understand that quite as well as I thought I did, because it shouldn't have read the whole entire thing, and I'm sure it didn't with as fast as that thing went. Convert implicit. Okay, I'm not going to go there. So it's not really an include. Oh, no, I don't want the actual execution plan for SpBlitz Index. It's not really an include, it's more of a key. So I need to start writing down SQL manual. That's because the index wasn't built with max.1. You're right, but it shouldn't have to scan all 147 segments. Now I'm tempted to, well, no, okay, I was going to say if I go and create it, you're right. It's aligned based on the vote ID. Very good, Emmanuel. That's true. So this is going to be another fun thing that we get to talk through. So when I did this, when I created this index, when I created the non-clustered column store, Santi, no, you were good earlier, but you missed it there. That's all right. You're batting 50-50, which is better than most. So when I created this non-clustered column store index, what SQL Server does is it reads the original copy of the data in order to build the new column store index. Well, the original copy of the data was sorted by ID, not by user ID. So this thing that Emmanuel got, now Emmanuel is the most smart person in the room, or the least sober, depending on how you want to think of it. If you want to learn more about what just transpired here, column store, Nico has a series of posts on this. So if you go read on Nico's site, let me go paste that in over there, and I believe he's going to have one on the builds. Let's see if this explains it. Does he have segment? He didn't even mention segments in there. Hold on. Segment. That's it right there. That'll work better. So it all has to do with how you create the indexes and how the data is sorted at the time of its creation. So Emmanuel, yes, I totally do remember that, and it's very good of you to remember. That's so good. That's so fantastic. People actually read my stuff. That's so impressive. So I ended up reading all the segments, but that's okay. It's still crazy fast. So these aren't really includes. These are really all keys. So I got to start making notes of the things that I want to change inside here. So things to change. We'll say column store. Hey, Michael, good to see you again, and welcome to the club. So column store, bugs, feature requests. SQL Emmanuel says, I had the newsletter framed in my bedroom. Very cool. That script, though, was just, I was like, oh my God. So first off, like if I take a graph of the number of people who understand what a column store index is, how segment elimination works, how you can cause segment elimination by like aligning your indexes. Oh my God, like the Venn diagram or the scope of how few people really understand what was going on in that was just amazing. So my hat was totally off to you there. That was just absolutely fantastic. So very good work. And it's funny because I know you had to put so much incredible work into that script. We should totally, let's go find that out. So let's go give you props here on the webcast. So Emmanuel, SQL Server, align column store index. And let's see if we can track it down. That is beautiful. But that's not the original link. No, that is the original link. Okay, here, cool. So let's go copy paste this out and go put it over into the chat so that everybody can see it. So this is really cool. So now back over here to this. So the things that I need to fix in here. So in SpBlitz Index at table name equals votes. You didn't imagine that. No. Like seriously, we could do a poll and then hardly anybody would even get the concept that I just briefly described, let alone build a script to fix it. You're like totally on the edge there. In terms of people who get edge case, yeah, right, exactly. In terms of people who get that edge case thing, it was like me, I was barely there. I was like, oh man, oh wow, that's genius. Eric Darling, Joe, the hell's his name? Who's Eric's Darling's friend? Joe Obish. And I don't know a whole lot of other people who would have got that concept. So that was really good. The columns are all shown as includes, not as keys. Let's see here. What else in there? The data size is, or in the size column. Emmanuel, oh, thank you. Very cool. Andy Bear, I actually wouldn't. I would have developers do it just because I'm just a database administrator. So all I focus on is the data part, and then I leave all of the front-end development to other people who are way smarter than I am because the front-end development is truly hard. All the debugging that goes into that. Databases is so much easier. Swameware, yeah, I know, right? So in the size column, the data is shown as, copy paste this out. I don't think I want to call that lob data. So the way that data is stored is technically off-row data in the sense that it's not stored in traditional 8K pages. But at the same time, I'm like, people who have column store indexes, they don't need to hear that it's lob. They should really just say that it's 1.2 gigs. No, raise that something. No, seriously. This stuff, once you get started past the basics, is really easy. It's really not that bad. It doesn't change that much over the course of decades. Whereas front-end development, oh my God, that changed. I used to be a front-end developer, so I got my start back in the late 1990s with classic ASP. True story. So I got started originally with, worked in hotels, then worked my way up to like hotel management. And I realized over time, I'm like, oh my God, if you work in hotels, you work every weekend, every Friday night, every holiday, because sooner or later there aren't enough housekeepers, people making omelets, everything around there. If you're working in hotels, sooner or later you have to work every holiday. So now I ended up going into hotel management and then going into hotel accounting and then going back into computers because I'd used computers a lot as a kid and doing front-end work with Macromedia Dreamweaver, UltraDev, Classic ASP, VB Script with backends in Access and SQL Server. And my boss brought me, it was like the lead architect for a software company at the time. My boss brings me books for .NET and for Java. This is like the early 2000s. Brings me books for those too. And he's like, okay, we got to get out of Classic ASP. It's going to be one of these two things. I don't know which one. Your job is to go learn both of these and then tell me which one we should standardize on. Should we use Visual Studio or should we use Java and Eclipse? And I'm like, okay, so here we go. I go and try and learn both of those. And at the end of that, I'm like, you know what? I don't know which one of these is going to win. I think they're both going to be fine. But I've learned about myself that I really, really hate programming. I really hate development. I really hate debugging. I don't want to learn another language again for the rest of my life. I also know that at that point I realized if I get into development, I'm going to be learning a new language and a new framework every 6 months for the rest of my life. And I'm like, I cannot get out of that fast enough. My wife is from Central America. Her whole family's from Central America. They all speak Spanish, mostly, and then hardly some English, but not quite as much. And even with that, I spent years in high school learning Spanish. I know enough to get myself into trouble. I still can't bring myself to learn real Spanish, even though I'm down in Mexico all the time. I just know enough just to get to myself into trouble, and then that's it. And then I'm out. I'm like, forget it. David, it's Richie, my developer, is looking at Dino too, because a lot of our stuff in the back end is all Node, and then he was looking at that because it looks a little bit better with the TypeScript and all that. Oh, cool. David says, now you work every weekend doing this. Yeah, but I own the company, and I drive a Porsche, and I live in downtown San Diego, so you know what, it's the old saying, why work 40 hours a week for somebody else when you can work 80 hours a week for yourself? Whee! So now we have that. So hi, Imran from Pakistan. So I've got a rough idea what I need to fix inside here. So I got to go and do that. I'm gonna the rest of it's fine. So this is for non-clustered column store indexes. So in order to do my demo here for whenever I write the blog or the bug request to fix it. So that's for non-clustered column store. Now I want to go create a clustered column store index too as well, because I have a feeling that that's also going to be a little bit wiggy. The last one took 1:09 in order to run. I don't know that I really want to do that, so I'm going to create a smaller one. Neil, I'm not sure by what do you mean where else? You're here. What else do you need to know? So let's see here. Let's dump some stuff into a table. We'll say select top million rows star into DBO votes new. Well, we'll say it votes many from DBO votes. So we'll just go put 1,000,000 rows into a table. Then I'm going to do a create clustered column store on it. Create clustered column store index CL on CCI, I guess, on DBO votes many. And I don't know that I need to put anything inside there other than that. Beautiful, fantastic. All right, so good. So now we created a clustered column store index on that table. Let's go see how SpBlitz Index reacts with that one. So copy that out. And now SpBlitz Index table name equals you. And let's see what we get. So that's not really right either. It's the same exact problem there in that it says they're all includes, and they're not really includes. And I have the same problem here around the size. So I guess it doesn't really matter whether it's a clustered index or a non-clustered index. I have the same basic problem here. So that's cool. So at least I know the problem that I need to go and overcome. So it's funny, who was it? One of you was saying that Brent liked the first index took like, or the first index type took like 40 minutes, and then the second one, you know, is going to be way worse. Well, thankfully it's not that bad. So let's go update our GitHub issue, and let's say with what we've learned so far. So what we learned so far, temporal tables fully supported. Column store indexes have 2 bugs, and I'm going to call them bugs because for me I want them to be a little bit better in terms of features. Column store, so yeah, we'll just set this stuff down in here. Repro, well, I won't even have to do that. And then let's see, I don't know if that works for double indented. Let's go find out. And let's see, comment. All right, perfect. Oh, that's good. So let's go back and edit that to a little better fully describe what we're talking about. For column store indexes, let's say that everything is a key just to conceptually simplify it. And then for column store indexes, let's just say the size and not anything about LOB just to simplify it. It's not like you would make keys and includes and clustered ones, because you don't get to choose what's a key versus an include. If you go back and look at the create column clustered one that I used, so here, this is how you create a clustered one. So it's effectively on all the columns. But I love the question that you're asking, but yeah. So in here, it's not like you would make different storage and management decisions on column store indexes for lob versus non-lob. All right, so there we go. We've got column store indexes. What's next in our list of things to go and play with? Let's close that. Let's close that. Close you. Let's come back up over into here, and I'm almost afraid to look. Oh, man. Ay, 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 ay. I know. So here's the thing. Microsoft came out with this thing called Hackathon in-memory OLTP, and the idea was that your data was only going to live in memory, and that let me step back even further, because that's not entirely true. When they started architecting this, the folks at SQL Server, brilliant folks, Dr. David DeWitt, for example, brilliant folks said, hardware is changing. Computer hardware has changed over time, and it doesn't make sense to store data on disk the same way that we used to. We should store it differently. We should append only. Every time we do an insert, update, or delete, we should append data into the column store, or into the new way of storing data. And so they architected a totally different way of storing data called Hackathon or in-memory OLTP. If you want, you can store the data on disk and in memory, or if you want, it can just be in memory and nowhere else. Now, if it's just in memory and nowhere else, you lose it on shutdown. But that's okay for some usage situations, like website session state. If you lose your entire database server, if you fail over from one place to another, you probably want to have everybody log out and log back in again. You probably wouldn't want to do this with carts. Like shopping carts, you would probably want to persist beyond failovers because people come back a week or 2 weeks later and they want to see the same things inside their carts. But staging tables for data warehouses could be another theoretically good example. In theory, if you lose the SQL Server in the middle of a data warehouse load, you would be fine. David says kind of a little like Redis. Yeah, and even Redis lets you persist things to disk now these days if you want to try and use it as more of like a permanent data store. The idea of this made perfect sense. And I looked at the technology involved and I'm like, sure, why not? The implementation of it was just a little at first because Microsoft went with a really small feature set. They didn't support a lot of things that they support with regular tables. Foreign keys, classic one. Now, granted, you probably shouldn't be using foreign keys if you need in-memory OLTP's performance. But there were things like data types and certain kinds of joins to other tables that weren't supported, so it didn't really get a lot of adoption. My personal problem with it was CheckDB. Like, CheckDB didn't even work, wouldn't even check for corruption. And if you had any corruption in-memory OLTP, your database wouldn't even start. Now, I have never, in the years that I've been doing performance tuning, I have never found a successful use case for in-memory OLTP, not even once. Every time that someone's come to me and said, hey, we're thinking about in-memory OLTP, we've looked at what they're doing and looked at what the requirements were for in-memory OLTP, and they simply weren't compatible. They wouldn't have been able to get it to work. Instead, we've crossed the finish line with traditional index tuning. I hardly ever see anybody using it, but every now and then I'll hear from someone saying, hey, I really use this and I think it's great. So all my goal is with SpBlitz Index is I just want to know what we show. I just want to know what we show so I can clearly say what's documented inside of SpBlitz Index. So that's all I'm about to do is I'm going to create a hackathon table and I'm going to think about the things that I would want to show inside SpBlitz Index in order to read the size. Now that reminds me of something else that I didn't catch inside Column Store. Something that I didn't say inside Column Store is I want to say how much stuff, like how many can we remove in. If you're asking if you can move in with me, the answer is hell no. I don't know you people. You're all dead to me. I don't even like you. I like you on that side of the screen. I don't want you anywhere near me. Stop hugging me. Stop trying to hump my leg. So with Column Store, there are a couple of other things that I didn't put in there. So I would also like to know the number of segments. I would like to know how much is in the Delta stuff, the row store portion of the Column Store table. So I'm going to go back and add those because we're not showing those today. And I think that's something that I would like to add. Malik, can you remove that? No, unfortunately, you still can't. So let's come back over here. So I'm also going to say down here in my notes for Column Store, enhancement, because I'm probably going to have to create this as a separate enhancement issue. Enhancement include size info about number of segments, a size of Delta store, row store, maybe last maintenance date. I'm kind of notorious for having gone down on record repeatedly that index maintenance on row store tables tends to be overdone. People try to rebuild their indexes every day thinking they're going to magically improve fragmentation when it doesn't really get them that much. Column store indexes are very different, which Emmanuel's post talks a lot about. So coming back over here towards Hackathon, so now I need to create an in-memory OLTP table, and I'm going to create them a couple of different ways. I am going to create one that's truly in-memory only, and then I'm also going to create one that's durable. And well, you do. So it's really funny. You do. SQL Server will rebuild it to remove all the dead rows. Anytime you do a delete in Hackathon, what happens is you get a new row inserted that's a tombstone that says that that former row has now been deleted. And if you want to read to find out the status of a row, you have to scan the table to find the most recent version to like pull the deleted tombstone out. So see, you do maintenance, but you don't do it. SQL Server does it for you behind the scenes, and you can't as easily predict when, too. Oh, it's so full of dragons. So Hackathon, an in-memory OLTP table. Let's go get the status. There are going to be things that I need to do for it. So SQL Server create in-memory table. I know that I'm going to have to create a file group and SQL Server sent, oh, beginner's guide. I like beginner's guides. I'm a beginner. I have no shame. I'm totally a beginner in this one. Okay, so make sure you have a high compatibility level in memory. All right, there we go. What? This is, hold on a second. Wait, what? She's got things in here that are a little bit unrelated. You don't actually have to do that. So I'm going to bail out of that because I think that that's actually going into a different direction. Let's go over to the good old documentation because that's not quite true. All right. Oh, well, you know what's funny? Oh, is they do it. Oh, wow. They even do it inside here. I'm surprised. All right. So let's go copy this out and paste it and copy paste. So this is just going to be current, copy, paste, paste, stack hackathon. Let's call it stack hackathon. I'm just going to leave this as stack hackathon and see if it'll work. So alter that, alter the file. Yeah, you actually want it. I think it's an MS SQL. This PC. M maybe? Let's see. M. Yep, perfect. Okay. MS SQL data. MS SQL data. All right, let's see if you work. Perfect, you work. Don't have to use anything because I'm already there. Okay, so now I got the in-memory OLTP file group. Now create a non-durable table. Okay, so we'll start with the persisted one. All right, so I'm going to copy paste their example out. Hi, Tristan. Love your fries and your kissing. Not you personally, but just the whole country. You all have got it going on there. So there's the original version. I'm going to start with just a simplified version. I'm going to say create table DBO users durable. And I'm going to grab a bunch of columns from the users table. So I'm going to say ID int, display name, nvarchar 40, location, nvarchar 100, reputation int, last access, date time. And with memory optimized equals on. And go. And let's try it. Wah, wah, wah. Did the original one do it? Yeah, it did. Oh, that's kind of cool. Oh, they did a primary key non-clustered. Oh, look at you. So I'm going to say primary key clustered, because that's what the ID column is for anyway. Execute. So primary key non-clustered. See, this is a good example of when I talk about the having to make changes to your application. Not having a clustered index probably isn't a showstopper for anybody's application, but every single time that you have to change the way that you work with SQL Server in order to accommodate a feature makes the feature less likely to be adopted. So let's see. All right, there we go. That took a disturbing amount of time. So let's insert into DBO users durable, ID, display name, location, reputation, last access date, select from DBO users. And then let's go load all that stuff in, copy and paste and get a space right there. And now, as it goes through and does its thing, let's go look over in MS SQL data. So I did this as memory optimized. I love this. I love this. This is so classic. SQL Server says, I'm going to try the zoom in. I haven't done the Mac zoom in a while with this, so hopefully that works. So you don't currently have permission to access this folder. Click continue to permanently get access to this folder. Oh man, thank goodness we have that incredible security built in there. The hackers will never figure that one out. So coming back over here now, so here's the tape or the where your hackathon data is getting stored. Hackathon fslog looks like hackathon v2. Okay, cool. There's a bunch of files inside there. So now if we go inside here, so this thing finished. It put 42 seconds in order to put the data inside there. Now let's go see what SpBlitz Index has to offer us. So let's say SpBlitz Index, table name equals users. No, it's users durable, and execute you. Okay, so it says that it's a heap and that it has a non-clustered primary key and the sizes aren't there. Okay, good. So now here's where we're going to have to start documenting what we support and what we don't support. Yeah, you can have a hackathon table that's temporal. So if you want to like put on 2 pairs of bad idea genes at exactly the same time, you could put on 2 of them instead of just 1 pair. That's not entirely. Sometimes I make jokes. So let's see the things that are wrong. So things that are wrong. It shows as a heap, but I don't know that we really want to call it that. We need a separate name, like saying in memory OLTP. The PK is fine. It doesn't show as non-clustered. It's yeah, exactly. I could put just one giant table, and we could put spatial and XML inside there too. God, it would be terrible. So the reads and writes might be correct, but the size is not correct. Both the heap and the non-clustered PK show as 0.0 show incorrect sizes. Well, actually, I need to break that out. The heap shows nothing in the size column. The non-clustered PK shows correct number of rows. PK size shows size column. Shows correct number of rows, but 0.0 megabytes as size. Wrong. So that, at least I know I've got work to do inside there. Let's now go check to see the index usage data. Let's see if the index usages are correct. So let's say select star from DBO users durable where display name equals Brent Ozar. Let's look at the execution plan for that and see what SQL Server shows. Okay, good. So we got a table scan here, which is true. And then we've also got up there a missing index recommendation. Let's see if the missing index recommendations show up correctly in SpBlitz, our SpBlitz Index. Let's go run it 10 times just to make sure to get a lot of data inside there. And then after it finishes, we'll go in and check the missing index recommendations. Execute. And see what we get. And yes, oh sweet, we get missing index recommendations on Hackathon. That's fantastic. Now the create T-SQL, that might not actually be right. I'm going to go copy it out and see if it works, because I have a hunch that it will not ask for a hash index. It doesn't, which is I'm glad you said that, because I need to document that it doesn't happen. So let's see. I have a hunch that this create index doesn't work as is. So I have to fix that too. So missing index recommendations show up as create index, but that doesn't actually work in memory OLTP. You have to use a different syntax. So that's fine. That's totally okay. When I say that that's fine, so as I'm looking at this, remember I said I have never run into a situation where the hackathon creating an in-memory OLTP index was the right way to get across the finish line. I have no doubt that someone out there has. However, my goal of this morning was to document what was broken so that then I can make a list of it. I'm just going to make it GitHub issues for these and go, if someone wants to fix it, great. But otherwise, just in the documentation, I'm going to lay out the things that you can't trust out of SpBlitz Index when it comes to these fancy pants in-memory OLTP tables. So cool. Now, so that's already, we found some bugs inside here in the durable objects. Now let's try the non-durable objects. Let's try the ones that aren't saved to disk at all. And then what I'll do is I'll show you corruption and why it's so bad and why I still don't use in-memory OLTP. So we'll come back over here, and what we created was, when we did the first time, we created this table as, whoops, come on back here, as memory optimized on, and I'm going to change it this time, and instead I'm going to do whatever they have for, instead of memory optimized equals on, I want to say non-durable. So that is durability equals schema only, all right? So durability equals schema only. Let's go create that. So we'll call this non-durable and go create that table. Then we'll go insert into users non-durable. Dump that stuff inside there. Then let's insert into, boy, it sure seems to take quite a while for something that's in memory. In memory, super quick, razor sharp fast. Can't get enough of that speed. Whew, if you don't mind, I'm going to have a sip of my tasty beverage while all this speed blows my hair back. Can barely hold on to my desk here with all this incredible speed. Jeez, oh Pete. So, in here, let's go get that. So I'm getting select star from users where non-durable, where display name equals Brenos are. Hey, buddy, you need to create an index on non-durable. So this is the syntax too that I would have to use if I was going to go build indexes on hackathon tables. I'm not going to build that into SpBlitz Index, but I am going to save the missing index details just so that we've got the definition. If it was really easy, I might actually do it. Just going to put that up there. So here, let's go do that 10 times. And then after that finishes, let's go run SpBlitz Index, table name equals users non-durable, and then go take a look and see what we get out of there. All right, so this first set, like the last set, this set's exactly the same. It has incorrect sizes inside here, and then it also, I don't know that I don't really want to call it heap. I'd rather call it like in-memory OLTP specifically, and also the create index syntax is incorrect. So so this is the same basically where whether it's regular, so I'm going to say things that are wrong for both durable and non-durable tables. So I'll go put this in the repro script. Let's go copy paste this in real quick into GitHub. So I'm going to copy all that stuff out there, copy, and I'm going to go put it into the GitHub issue. So paste that and comment. And then we'll come back over here to Management Studio, and I'm going to show you one other thing. So I'm going to close this, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to go into Object Explorer and refresh this list of tables. Now, does SpBlitz Index show the correct type of the index? No. For non-clusters, it just doesn't say anything. It assumes that all indexes on there are non-clustered, and it only tells you whenever it's an exception, like a heap, a clustered index, that kind of thing. Okay, so now what do I have inside here? I've got a durable and non-durable version of users. Now, with non-durable tables, they disappear every time the SQL Server, the data disappears every time the SQL Server restarts. That's fine. That's exactly as designed. That works beautifully. Good job. The durable stuff, this is a little tricky. So the durable stuff will be here after a restart. Normally. But now let's go through and stop the SQL Server. So I'm going to stop the SQL Server. Are you sure you want to? Yes. It's going to take a second in order to do the stop. Lee says, is it true that the insert was slow? No, because that insert was from a 1 gig table that's cached entirely in RAM. Because I've been using the users table so much today, I guarantee you that 1 gig was still in RAM, and it doesn't take that long to read a gig. So if I come out here, so this SQL Server is stopped right now. It's not up and running, although you can't really see that from the frickin' GUI. So this thing is stopped. Notice it's spinning out there because it can't connect. Now I'm going over into the hackathon data, and I'm going to delete stuff. you would never normally delete stuff. Hi, good morning, Marcos. You would never normally delete stuff, but the thing that you would do is you would cause corruption. You would go and monkey with the files on disk. I don't have the time for that. I'm going to go get coffee downstairs. So I'm just going to delete one file. Oh, Rasha, welcome to the club. Thank you. So I'm going to delete just one file. I'm going to right click on there, actually I'll rename it just so that I can bring it back from the dead. I'll rename it and I'm going to call this HCC backup. Are you sure it might become unusable? Yes, that's how I'm going to roll, and I'm going to go put it over on my desktop. So now when I go to start up the SQL Server again, so services, and go start up my SQL Server, start you up, start me up. Now the startup works fine, but now when I go to refresh, so let's see the SQL Server coming online. Come on in, big buddy. So when the SQL Server comes online, now when you have in-memory OLTP, the first thing that it has to go and do is it has to read the contents of the in-memory OLTP stuff up into RAM. So startup takes a lot longer is one of your problems. The more data that you have inside there, the worse off you're going to be. Wow, he's not supposed to actually work. I wonder if I refresh him. No, he's there. Wait a second. I wonder if they fixed something. Select top 1000. So let's just go select count star. Select count star from DBO users durable. Or I wonder if that one wasn't needed. Oh, it worked beautifully. Oh, wow. Okay, in that case, let's get a little bit more ambitious. Stop. Yes. Yes, I'm sure. And then, just going to go ahead and stop. Now let's come back over here and go back into MS SQL data, stack hackathon, and bye, Felicia. And then come back over here. Okay, there's nothing inside there. File stream header, I'm going to leave that exactly the way it is. Now let's see. Services, MSC, and SQL. And if they change something in here so that they're now writing into the user database, I'm going to be kind of shocked and awed. Let's refresh. Yep, yeah, I know. You can't refresh that. That's okay. Wah, wah, wah. So here we go. So Stack Overflow is now suspect, and you can't go into it. So if there's any corruption in Hackathon at all, at all obviously is a strong word, because just a second ago we deleted one of the files and it seemed to still recover okay. But so when there's corruption inside the Hackathon objects, your entire database is not available. That's different than what we see with regular tables. With regular tables, if you have corruption in them, you can still access everything else. You can even access the parts of the table that aren't corrupt, but here the entire database is offline. Wah, wah, wah. So I am going to, just to prep as we go off for our next demo, I'm going to delete that little fella, and then I'm going to restart. I'm surprised, why is it not showing agent? I'm going to disconnect and then connect again. I wonder if did I stop agent when I was doing those shenanigans? Let's see here. Let's start SQL Server agent just so he's up and running, and then close you and restart. Because I have a SQL Server agent job that will go in and restore my Stack Overflow database. So that takes a few minutes in order to run. So it's good. We've got our hackathon stuff documented over there in the GitHub issue. So let's see here. AJ says, do you have a video playlist to start MS SQL from scratch? When you say start, no, because it just starts automatically whenever you log in. To install it from scratch, yes. If you search for Brent Ozar Setup SQL Server, there are a bunch of videos and blog post walkthroughs that I've done over the years. I don't have one for 2019, but it just hasn't changed that much since like 2012. Okay, so now we're at a good stopping point. The sun's starting to come up, which means that I need to do two things. One, I need to go place my coffee and bagel order for the coffee shop downstairs because I want to make sure I get in first. And two, we should take a bio break. So we'll take a 5-minute bio break, and when we come back, we'll tackle XML indexes. I don't actually have, I don't think, an XML column inside Stack Overflow. So we're going to have to make one and then see how that performs with with SpBlitz Index, because there are a couple of different kinds of XML indexes, so that'll be even more complex as well. So 5-minute bio break, and we will be back. See y'all back here in 5 minutes. Okay, we are back. I had to laugh. N. Permiakov said, I'd like to see the shooting crew. It is just me. It is absolutely just me. I have a couple of Sony cameras set up in here, one on a side, like a B camera, so that you see my office behind me. And that's downtown San Diego there in the background. Then another camera right in front of my monitor, and I switch back and forth between those with an Elgato Stream Deck. I've actually blogged about my process. I can't quite get the Stream Deck up in there just with the cable length. I blogged a lot about my process. If you go to brentozar.com and click on my blog up at the top and then the home office categories, you can see everything with my streaming setup. Yes, Oizoken, that is the central library dome right there, which is kind of like Homeless Central, but still it's an absolutely gorgeous, I like it. I like modern architecture, so I kind of like it. And it's neat too that during the breaks when the trains go by, you can watch the trains go by and over there. And Permiakov says, no drummer playing on sheet notes. Just purely me, and that's why I often have to look down and be like, oh, where are the buttons on this? Because I'm still trying to remember where all the buttons are just by feel. It's dangerous how good I want to get at this. So let's see here. Santi says, will you be doing another class on column store indexes? That's a great question, and the answer is no. And here's the thing. I only want to teach something if I feel like I've really mastered that skill and if I've mastered it in production. I don't want to teach you things that I don't actually do for a living. I know that there are teachers out there who will kind of read you things from books online that'll just kind of blah, 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 blah. So I don't want to do something until I've really mastered it in production type uses. So there are people writing column store index courses that are really good, who really know their stuff. And I'd rather let them bring those kinds of things out than me try to do that. So I'm a huge believer in column store. I have the same feeling about PowerShell. Like, I'm not ever going to teach a PowerShell course. I would rather you learn it from people who do it every single day. It's not that I don't believe PowerShell's good. PowerShell's freaking amazing if you have the need to use it. I just don't. Just with my weirdo job, because I only manage one session at a time. SQL Dev DBA says there's a good group buy session on column store. There are actually like 2 or 3 of them, and I'm on the camera in there just because I'm running the conference at the time. Nico Neugebauer has a couple of really good sessions in there on column store, like when to use them, when not to. It's just fantastic. Surly Dev says he's, yeah, definitely real. We met in the United Kingdom, because back in the days when we could all travel. So yeah, and no travel scheduled right now for client stuff. I have one trip to Bulgaria that we're still trying to figure out how it's going to go. Because right now, yeah, Liverpool. Right now, Bulgaria has the 14-day quarantine, just like the UK does. If me, an American, comes in from outside, I got to shake it off for 14 days before I can go and actually do any work. And that doesn't make sense from a clienting perspective. I can't fly in and just hang out for 14 days before I go to work for a client. I'd lose my shirt. Yeah, so it's kind of a bummer. I'm still waiting to see what's going to happen with SQLBits too. You know, technically SQLBits is on. It's just not going to work. There's just no way it's possibly going to work if people have to hang out for, what about remote? What do you think you're doing here? What do you think? I'm in the next room with you? You think the voice you hear is me coming over your shoulder? This is remote. This is what remote is. But yes, that's all the work I do now is remote. And really most of my work for like the last decade has been remote. I've been telecommuting since 2004, I think it was. 2003, 2004, somewhere in there I've been telecommuting. Oh, what about Bulgaria? Oh yeah, if they want me to do remote, which is like I have a client starting tomorrow where I'm doing remote training. That's totally okay. It's just that it gets kind of tricky. So STBA, that's good. All right, so so far we've worked on Hackathon, Column Store, and what was the other one we just started? Temporal tables. Now coming down the home stretch we got about 45 minutes before my coffee shop opens. I've already placed my order for downstairs. The last one that we're going to go and tackle is XML indexes. This is another one where I don't see people using them very often because people seem resigned to just not putting XML in the database, or if they put XML in the database, it's going to be slow. And for the most part, that's true. SQL Server does have XML indexes. They just come with some drawbacks around sizes and the slower latency of inserting, updating, and deleting. These days, most of the time, if I'm dealing with XML in the database, I prefer computed columns instead, and then indexing those computed columns. But as long as people can put XML indexes in there, I should at least document how supported they are in SpBlitz Index. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to create a table with an XML column and populate it. Then, oh, it just occurred to me exactly where I'm going to get XML from. Oh, this is perfect. So I'm going to have to create a table with XML and then populate it. Then I'm going to have to create a couple of different XML index types and see how SpBlitz Index works. So I bet y'all can figure out where I'm going to get the XML from too. So if I had to pull XML data out of SQL Server, is there a place in SQL Server that has a ton of XML already? A ton might be strong, but some XML already, XML that I happen to be very personally interested in, and I query all the time. Can you imagine an XML source of data in SQL Server that I could go pull out? Bingo, Oizokin, you got it. Exactly. So I can go take stuff straight out of the plan cache. Exactly. G. Sardine nails it. So we'll just do a select from out of the plan cache, go dump it into a temp table, and off we go, or into a real table, and then off we go. I also wanted to show you, because this came in during the break, and you'll find it kind of funny. Those of you who were in on the last stream I coded a startup stored procedure that would run automatically whenever SQL Server started up and warn me about any databases that were having problems. What do you know? Look what came in over the break. We have a suspect database, Stack Overflow, which is entirely true. When my SQL Server restarted, when we were playing our games around there with Hackathon, it restarted and it was corrupt. So that was actually cool. So now let's go in, and I need to run some queries or I may not even, the IntelliSense may have enough stuff left over inside there. So where am I going to get queries from? So let's go get sysdm cached plans. Was this DMD SQL Server plan cache? How many plans? Let me do this. How many? Multiple plans, one query. Let's do this. Multiple plans, one query. Site brentozar.com. And so David says I need that startup check. So that check is GitHub. Hey. What? Where the hell did I put that thing? Oh, it's in demos. Yeah. So it's in here, and then send startup mail. This is Davidicus. I'm going to paste that link over into the chat. I'm going to blog about that. The post is probably going to go live next week. I still have some work that I want to do in there, but at least there. So there's that piece. And now let's come back over. So this is the query that I'm going to use in order to get stuff from the plan cache. I really like this blog post. Some of you may want to run it and go find out when you've got duplicate plans in the plan cache. So it's really slick. I highly recommend it. One of my favorite posts. Why multiple plans for one query are bad. And I'm going to go get the diagnostic query out of there, only because it already has a query that goes up against the plan cache already. So let's see if I can pull that. Okay, perfect. So it gives me a bunch of sample query plans. So now I'm just going to create a table, and I'm going to pull that into my car. Well, no, we'll do it as a real table. Well, let's do it in a user database. I don't like doing that stuff in the Stack Overflow or in the master database. Into cached plans. That's fine. And we'll go, yeah, that's fine. Just execute. All right, 22 rows affected. So now I got a table. Select star from DBO cached plans. Now I got a table. It's got some stuff in it. Oh, beautiful. Perfect. And they all have sample query plan populated. That's just elegant. So now what I should have done was I should have, don't know why that's in my memory today. Columns. So we did it as, oh, it's even XML. Yes. Sweet. Oh, I thought it was going to come in as a different data type. I thought in my query I might not be casting it as XML, and I was like, damn it, now I got to go rewrite the query or change the query so it comes out casted as XML, but it's even XML. That's perfect. Mwah, fantastic. So now I got to create XML indexes. I got to create XML indexes on that sample query plan column. So let's go see about how we do that, because I certainly don't remember the SQL syntax for that. SQL Server create XML index. Welcome to the club, Bertol. Create XML index. So there are two kinds of indexes that we create, regular and primary. Or regular and path, something like that. Let's just go copy paste the stuff out from the syntax. Create a primary index. Okay, copy. And let's paste this in. We're not going to use AdventureWorks. We don't have to do if exist stuff. Create primary XML index, pxml, sample query plan on DBO cached plans, sample query plan. All right, let's see if this works. Cache plans need to have a clustered primary key on it. Okay, that's fine. Alter table DBO cached plans. What could be? It has to be clustered primary key. Damn, and it can't even be an index. I was hoping that it could just be a clustered index. Damn, that's kind of bananas. Okay, in that case, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to say create table DBO plans cached. ID int identity 11 primary key clustered, and then query plan XML and let's try that. Execute, insert into DBO plans cached query plan, select sample query plan from DBO cached plans, go populate them rows, and execute. Oizokin, you are lucky and blessed. I think 4 is probably my max in a table where people knew what they were doing, but I've seen higher than that, and less than 32 columns is just banana pants. So now we're gonna say this is pxml query plan. And query plan and plans cached. All right, here we go. Big money. Perfect. So that one works. Then the sample for the syntax for the second one was create a secondary index. So let's copy paste that out. I don't even know what the differences are. I knew at the time I had to go into the Microsoft Certified Master Program. I've never used it since. And I'm going to even name this secondary just to make sure we're really clear on what we're doing here. Copy, paste, using XML index. Oh my God. Oh, we have to do that too? Oh, God. Take off that. And now, who knows if this is actually going to work? It wouldn't appear. Oh, it did. Oh, okay. All right. That works. Fantastic. So now, SpBlitz Index. David, I genuinely do. And I do when y'all aren't watching too. This is easy for me to start streaming because I'm like, you really... it's easy for me to start streaming because this is effectively what I do whether y'all are around or not, is that I'll talk to myself the whole time. I'm like, all right, so now what I'm about to do is this. I don't know. And I'll even make myself bets. I'll make myself bets as to whether or not something's going to work because I love it when SQL Server surprises me in ways I didn't expect. And I also love it when I know SQL Server well enough. Shane asked a good question. I wonder if they'll create JSON indexes next in SQL Server. So the JSON format came out, I think, in 2017. Don't quote me. But they didn't put it in indexes in 2019, if I remember right. Did they bring out JSON in 2017? For some reason, I'm thinking that they brought out JSON, and then the next version, they were just like the John Travolta gif. They were just kind of sneaking out of, JSON indexes? No, we don't know anything about that. So I get a little nervous about that. So SpBlitz Index table name equals plans cached, and then let's see what happens. So we have, yes, oh, Surly Dev says, I was just about to ask for a friend. Can SQL Server support JSON? I started an app that gets it from an API. I store it in a varchar max field. I parse some stuff out. Tempted to use back to. So all that SQL Server's JSON support really boils down to today is that you can store it. Golf clap. It's not really that impressive. But people were constantly hammering at Microsoft, you need to support JSON. You need to support JSON. All the cool kids have JSON. And I get it. Microsoft is like a parent, is like, shut up, here's a toy. All right, now go play with the toy. And then it turns out the kid's more interested in the box than the toy. So then the kid gets, okay, look, no, we're not going to go there. But the idea was that Microsoft just basically checked a box. Mornings, Twitch boy. Microsoft just checked a box, and that was kind of the end of it. So does it technically support JSON? Yeah, but if you're really doing, and yeah, absolutely, Big Mike, that's a great use case. And Bert Wagner has a good video on that. But the problem is you can only refer to one value, basically. If you have multiple values in the JSON, then it's not going to end up working. So my feeling is I don't want to spend SQL Server licensing to store JSON. Like SQL Server Standard Edition, $2,000 US a core, $7,000 US a core for Enterprise Edition. There's so many NoSQL like document databases out there that are effectively free. So if you're going to scale the thing long term, if you think you're going to put like 1 million records in it or beyond, I would probably just look at NoSQL storage instead. If you're in the cloud, if you're in Azure, that probably means Cosmos DB. And I haven't touched Cosmos DB. Nothing wrong with it. All right. All right, so now Wrestling Jesus is wrestling with pronunciation. I get it. That's how it works. Yeah, see, certainly, Dev, if it's only internal use, you're fine with either storing it in varchar max columns, or if you wanted to use JSON, you could, but I'm just not that big of a deal fan of it. All right, so now let's go see. So what ended up coming out of it? So we have our primary XML index and our secondary XML index. It's good that it says XML, but we don't have anything in here in terms of size. We don't have anything in here in terms of size. We don't have, it doesn't look like we have operational stats. We'd have to dig deeper in terms of that. So I'm just going to say that for bugs or things to be aware of, index definition, definition says XML, that's good. Doesn't say columns, that's not quite as good. The size column is empty. Definitely want to show size there. But this is where, like I talked about this morning stream, I'm really just trying to get the lay of the land about how many issues we have and what would be required to store them. I don't even know how you go and get the size for XML indexes. Surely there has to be a way, but it's just where, as a good developer, we're going to break out the list of stuff that we do before we actually go and execute it. And I may never go and execute it. So I think those are the only two things that I'm worried about there. There may be other bugs inside of it too as well, like the creates or drops might not actually work, but at least that gets us pretty close. Okay, so let's copy that out, and I'm just going to copy the whole shebang. I'm not going to put that query up inside the GitHub issue because that starts to be a little bit over the top. But let's say create a table and load some query plans into it, and then that's fine. So we'll copy that out and then paste that over in our GitHub issue. And here's our XML indexes, paste and comment. All right, so here we go. So now, after everything we did this morning, we did everything other than spatial. I didn't do spatial indexes, and I'm frankly not going to try given the price or given the time that we have left inside here. So what I've basically done is I've documented support, like what our support looks like. Now I have to turn this into something a little friendlier. So what does friendlier look like for me? What I'm probably going to do is I'm going to create a little grid of these are the things we support for each kind of index, and then for each thing that we don't support, like empty size columns or incorrect index names, I'm going to link to a GitHub issue that if people want to code it, they can. I probably will at some point when I just want to go learn more about these indexes, but I got to prioritize it with everything else that I have to do. So it may end up being like it was 4 years before we got to this point on this GitHub issue. It may be another year or two before we eventually add that. With some of them, we probably never will. For example, with Hackathon, I'm probably never going to add anything in there just because I don't see it used that often. But for the others, like column store indexes, I probably want to get those right, like the IDs and the sizes. So I'll go create a little grid with that in GitHub. I'm not going to do that today, though. I'll call the technical part of the Q&A done for today, and I'll open it up. If y'all want to ask any questions, you can totally fire away. Oh, I should do a shout out to this week's sponsor too while y'all type out questions. So this week's sponsor is SQL Grease. SQL Grease is a monitoring tool where you install an agent, it connects to your SQL server, pulls down diagnostic stuff, and then pushes it into SQL Grease's cloud. So that way you don't have to install a big monitoring repository, you don't have to clear out space on a SQL server. It simply sends data up into SQL Grease's cloud, and then that way they send you back advice on here's what's going on with their SQL server. It also lets them do things that you wouldn't be able to do as easily on premises, like integrate Azure and machine learning so that they can start to spot anomalous workloads, something that you just wouldn't want to try to pull off on premises. So that's SQL Grease, and you can get started with it totally free. They have a 7-day version that works. You install it, pulls data down for 7 days, and it's the full-blown product. It just only works for 7 days, but you can go back and re-up it. You can go in every time that you're having performance type issues. So Faraz asks, have you done a video on security in SQL Server? No, I tend to steer clear of security, and it's right, my contract actually prohibits security stuff. I don't want to take any security stuff from clients as well, because I think really to do security right, you need to just do security. It's kind of like the people that I see who kind of sort of do everything in performance, except they really suck at everything. I don't want to really suck at everything. I want to be really in-depth good in it. So if you want someone to teach you security, that kind of thing, your best bet is probably Microsoft at this point. I don't know a lot of good security resources in our community that are free. Denny Cherry has a book on SQL Server security, but it's several years old now. Let's go pull that up just so that you can see it. If I go to Amazon and I search for Securing SQL Server Denny Cherry, Denny's book is, I want to see, so that one's 2011, but he has a newer edition. Let's see if this one's the newest edition. But I want to say it's several years out. Yeah, so like 2015. I don't even think row-level security was inside SQL Server at that point, so yeah. Oizoken asks a good question. What about the impact of row-level security on performance? For me, it's just if you need that kind of security, you have to pay the price for it. Does it slow your SQL Server down? Yeah, just like airbags slow a car down. I mean, airbags add more weight to a car. And anytime you add more weight to a car, it immediately goes slower. But if you want to put kids in the car, then you probably want airbags. So that's kind of my feeling with like encryption. And I don't think row-level security really works very well. I think it's too easy to hack your way around. But other techniques in SQL Server are a little bit better in terms of less hackable. Always Encrypted is a good example of that. The new Always Encrypted when it came out, but it requires the application to encrypt, or the drivers in the application to encrypt before it makes its way down to SQL Server. So when you select data inside SQL Server, it's all now that's cool. I love that because as a DBA, I don't want to see secure information. I should never be able to see anyone's password or their social security number, anything like that. David, no, SQL Server does not have a feature like Oracle's adaptive cursor sharing. There are several features in Oracle that I kind of look at and I go, oh, that's kind of amazing. You know, that would be really cool. But you know what? There aren't that many, given that SQL Server Enterprise Edition is $7,000 a core, and Oracle Enterprise Edition is $47,000 a core. So I'm like, Oracle should probably up the game there. And then I see the stuff like autonomous database, and I'm like, oh, that's, oh, yeah, ooh. But we'll see. I don't know anybody who's actually using it, so that would be curious to go and see. I have nothing but respect for Oracle's amazing platform, decades of high performance. I know people who work there. Like, I would never talk smack about the product itself. It's baller. You know, it's whenever I read feature documentation, I'm like, that looks amazing. But just at $47,000 a core, I don't know how much more runway they've got as people start to move off of really expensive platforms. Hey, look, you could say the same thing about SQL Server, right? At $7,000 a core, that looks really expensive compared to stuff like Postgres, MySQL, MongoDB, as we were talking about earlier. I think the SQL Server still has a really nice runway because they're stealing customers down from Oracle. At the same point, there are also customers nipping at SQL servers behind. I mean, Postgres is nipping at SQL servers behind, getting better all the time. When we built our own applications, like SQL Constant Care, so we have this application where we go and pull your SQL server's data, SQL Constant Care, Aurora site, brenozar.com. When we went and designed the database that we were going to use for SQL Constant Care, we built it with Amazon Aurora on the back end, which is Postgres compatible. It's a version of the Postgres engine. It just does different storage, different scale out type stuff. Because for me, like if I'm going to spend money on a database, this was pretty baller. Shane, yeah, I'm with you, Shane. I feel the same way. Like starting to unlock parallel queries, still nowhere near as cool as what SQL Server can do with parallelism, but it's still a big step up. SQL Server's parallelism is incredible at how much stuff it can do. However, Aurora has some slick parallelism tricks up its sleeve. Aurora AWS parallelism. So what they'll do is they will actually parallelize queries across servers. When you want to run a big query, it's like a data warehousing type query, they will actually parallelize that work across multiple compute nodes, having multiple compute nodes each running queries in parallel, since they all share exactly the same data storage underneath. So I look at that and I'm like, damn, that is pretty freaking impressive. We don't need that in our own work. Most of our stuff tends to be relatively small OLTP type queries, but I get excited looking at that kind of thing for future of databases type stuff. All right. Well, that is everything that I wanted to talk through with y'all today. Now I will free you up to go enjoy your Father's Day. Don't forget, call your parents if you're still lucky enough to have them alive. That's fantastic. Thanks for hanging out with me this morning. Good to see you again, Oizokin. Always good to see you. You're totally smart. And you subscribed. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so I will go off and call my father. I've already texted him this morning, but I'll go in and call him. And now that my wife will probably be up here shortly, I'm going to go down and get my bagel here in a while, and I will see y'all later. Adios, everybody. Have a good one.